A 20 años del estreno de la trilogía del Señor de los Anillos de Peter Jackson, hablé con alguien con quien quería hablar hace mucho tiempo. De hecho, fue una de las personas que busqué ni bien empecé a pensar en alguien de esta película. Les recuerdo que acá arriba les dejo el link. Hablé con el diseñador de producción, con Grant Major, hace ya casi 2 años más o menos. Hablamos sobre cómo fue armar esta película, pero llegó el momento de hablar de alguien que estuvo adentro y me contó cómo fue trabajar en esta película. Se trata de Sala Baker, nada más y nada menos que Sauron, que si bien se inició como extra, terminó siendo el villano principal de esta película, y me contó cómo fue todo ese proceso, incluida una genial anécdota con Viggo Mortensen.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
It was pretty much one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me. Coming from not being an actor or not doing stunts, I was hired. I went into audition for Lord of the Rings and auditioned as an extra. And then when I auditioned as an extra, one of the casting people said, "Why don't you try out for the stunt team?" And I was like, "Well, what is that?" And so I said, "Sure, I'll go and audition." And I auditioned and ended up making the team. And then started with the stunt team on Lord of the Rings full time for 19 months, shooting all 3 movies.
This is the One Ring, forged by the Dark Lord Sauron. Sauron needs only this ring to cover all the lands of a second darkness.
Once I made it into stunts, they were auditioning to recast Sauron. And I said to Bob Anderson, he was our sword master on Lord of the Rings. He taught Errol Flynn, he taught Sean Connery, he taught all the old greats back in the day, and he was training us to be our sword master. And so I said to him, "I want to be Sauron." And at the time I was a little bit bigger. And he says, "You're too big. You're too big." And so I was like, "Oh, whatever." And then later on they said, "Hey, Sala," they called me after a long day at work, and I was supposed to get up at 3 a.m. to go to work. And I get a call at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning saying, "Hey, can you come into work tomorrow?" And I was like, "I'm already coming in 3 hours." And they said, no, can you come in now? And I was like, "What?" So I, got my bag ready and went to work, and they wanted to recast Sauron. So we fabricated a new suit to fit me, because the suit was for a skinnier person at the time. And so when I went to refit the suit, they made it bigger and fabricated it so that I could fit into this suit. And then we did a mock-up of me playing Sauron and sent it to Peter Jackson, and they loved it. So I ended up getting the character Sauron and working on all 3 films, playing a few other characters, but Sauron was the biggest one.
The power of the ring could not be undone.
There was a few scenes that didn't actually make the movie. So the scene, we might have seen it in some of the extended versions, but there's a scene where Sauron fights Aragorn that was never in the movie. It was in the behind the scenes. And there was also another scene where I was playing an Uruk-hai, where there was a dream sequence with Viggo, Aragorn, and Liv Tyler, Arwen, where a Uruk-hai, me, ends up killing him. So there's that scene that's also didn't make the cut, because instead of an Uruk-hai, they ended up doing the Sauron thing, and then they cut the Sauron thing, so.
I spoke with the production designer of the movie like 1.5 years ago, something like that. And he told me that in order to have like the best movie possible, you had to use real swords. So how was training and using them in action?
Well, here's the thing. We never really ever used real swords because it's too dangerous. We used real swords for close-ups.
Give him the sword of the king.
In terms of fighting, for the safety of our stunt people and our actors, we don't want to be swinging a real sword, because the weight of it, if someone doesn't catch it, it can, you can really hurt someone. Now, we had a scene in Helm's Deep where Viggo had an aluminium sword. It's not a real one. It's a lightweight aluminum sword, but maybe I shouldn't tell this story. That's okay. But the thing was, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault. We were training with a new stallion, a black stallion, to play his horse, right? And it was a brand new one. We hadn't had it on set before, and it hadn't been around swords swinging by the head, or they hadn't seen us with the masks on as the monsters. So we took our masks off so it could see that it's humans. But then when we went to rehearse the fight and attack Viggo, Viggo went to hit me on the shoulder, and the horse reared up and he missed my shoulder and got my head, right? He split my head open.
No.
I had 9 staples in my head, but had it been a real sword, I would have been dead. I mean, Viggo is one of the best in terms of going 100% into his character. I mean, a lot of actors do, but Viggo took his sword home every day. He had it on his belt. He didn't wear, he hardly wore shoes. He was a barefoot guy, and he's such a great person. And most people don't know this. We were having some issues with a coordinator back in the day, that we had a big court case that costed a lot of money. It was around $48,000, and we couldn't pay the fees, or the stunt guys couldn't pay the fees. And we were like, we're going to have to figure out how we're going to pay this fee. It's going to end up being around about $5,000 to $6,000 each to pay the lawyer's fee. And then when we went in for another meeting, they had told us that someone had taken care of the bill for us. Someone had already paid for it. And we found out, they were like, he doesn't want you to know. And we were like, we want to know who paid for the bill. And it was Viggo. Viggo didn't want us to know, and he didn't want us to stress about it. So he paid the bill. Yeah. And so Viggo is just one of the most genuine human beings. He's the person that I can call my brother. He's a real human. He's a real artist. And I was glad that I got to meet him and his son Henry back in New Zealand. So it was a dream come true to meet someone like him in a first movie, who happens to end up being the king. And it just pays homage to him being so loving, so caring for his people, not only for the movie, but as a human being, knowing that his stunt guys that he fights every day for a year is having issues. So he took care of it. And so we would go out to the bars and drink with Viggo, and he would go up to the bar and say, give me a bottle of whiskey, right? And then they would give him the bottle. No one's ever done that in New Zealand. No one has given him the bottle like that. And he grabbed the bottle of whiskey, Jameson's whiskey. He called all the stunt people around in a circle in this bar and said, drink, pass it around. And he passed it around to all of the stunt people. And that's just the kind of person he is, So Viggo is a part of my heart because of how much of a great human being is. And that's what you need in the king.
Yes,
What was crazier for me was being on set with everyone and seeing the sets and seeing the world that Peter Jackson and all the creators had designed for us. It literally just put us right in where we were supposed to be, in the characters, in this world of that Tolkien created, years ago. And so it made it easier for us to just be there and be in it and to get into character. And Peter Jackson is such a visionary director that the way he would talk to you just puts you right in there as well. So it was such a beautiful experience for me as my first movie.
Yeah.
And what a movie to start on. So it meant a lot to me more going through the production over the 19 months of full-time shooting, and then pickup shots for each movie, which were 4 to 5 months at a time.
You have no power. Yeah.
What do you think the show is going to mean for the hardcore fans of the trilogy?
I hope it does the franchises justice.
Yeah.
It's always hard because I've seen some stuff on the internet saying that they were having issues with the show, and so it's quite a big production to do in such a little time to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm a Lord of the Rings fan.
Yeah.
I hope and I wish that Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King, they will either be added to with the new TV show, or they will stand alone separately in years to come.
Yeah.
As the benchmark for Tolkien's world, right? In my mind, The Hobbit was good and it did well, but those first 3 movies, man, just painted such a beautiful picture of all the worlds.
Yeah.
Mordor, Isengard, Rivendell, like all these worlds that were created by Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, just so epic.
Yeah.
And now that has happened, our expectations are all the way up here.
Yeah.
All the way up here because of what Peter Jackson did. When I watch the show and when it comes out, I have to put that aside and say, okay, let's just see what they have here. And I hope it's good. I can only send good vibes to our Lord of the Rings family. But we have high hopes and we have high expectations. Because if you're going to redo Lord of the Rings and do the story of it, better be good.
Yeah.
I'm not saying better be. I just wish it would stand up to or add to the original films.